We're coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios. This is Prime News on SABC 3. Let's give you a sense of our top stories with these headlines.
The Minister and I have agreed on an inflation target of 3%, and 3% is in line with our peers.
Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says the continued implementation of structural economic reforms as well as the new inflation target of 3% will help support growth going forward. There's been mixed political reaction to Finance Minister's medium-term budget policy statement.
What became clear in terms of the investigation, indeed, there was some working relationship. But it's not a working relationship of the municipality with CAT VIP.
And the Madanga Commission has heard of the insidious lengths suspended EMPD Police Chief Julius Mkwanazi allegedly went to in a bid to legitimize Vusimuzi Cat Matala's company. Good evening and welcome to this Wednesday's edition of Prime News on 3. My name is Paulette Nell. Thank you so much for joining us as we keep you informed with the latest in and around your world. Let's start with this. Tabling the medium-term budget policy statement in Parliament, the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana said the government wants to reduce the budget deficit, stabilize debt, reduce debt servicing costs, and continue raising the primary budget surplus. The continued implementation of structural economic reforms, as well as the new inflation target of 3%, will help support growth going forward.
Government plans to put government finances on a sustainable path and the economy on a growth trajectory. The local economy is expected to grow at 1.2% this year, down from 1.4% previously forecast. Gross tax revenue is revised up by 19.3 billion rand due to higher net value-added tax collection and taxes on corporate income and profits. Spending is expected to grow at an annual average of 3.6%, from 2.6 trillion to about 2.9 trillion rand. The budget deficit for the financial year is expected to decline by 8.2 billion rand due to robust revenue performance and lower borrowing costs. Government now expects debt to stabilize at 77.9% of GDP in this financial year, arresting the long climb in debt trajectory. Debt servicing costs consume 21 cents of every 1 rand of revenue collected. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says government is considering a formal fiscal anchor to help ensure that public finances remain sustainable over the long term.
Our optimism is rooted in the progress we've made in keeping the promises we have set out. A promise to grow the economy faster, to strengthen public finances, and to improve life for all South Africans.
South Africa's inflation target has been reduced to 3% with a 1 percentage point tolerance in cases of shocks. It is expected that this will anchor inflation to lower levels and reduce the cost of living and borrowing costs and support higher long-term growth, bringing the target in line with emerging markets peers and trading partners.
The Minister and I have agreed on an inflation target of 3%. And 3% is in line with our peers. It is something that the Treasury and the Reserve Bank have studied comprehensively for a period of time.
SABC News, Pretoria.
Even though markets have reacted positively to the policy statement, analysts caution that optimism is mostly short-term. The rand edged up 0.33% against the dollar at the close of a trade as investors welcomed the Treasury's commitment to fiscal consolidation. Some analysts warn that concerns remain about weak growth and the state's ability to deliver on reforms.
Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Fund Managers, Zwelakhe Mnguni, says Treasury's message of fiscal discipline helped reassure investors, but warns low growth continues to cloud the longer-term outlook. Mnguni also expressed concern over the country's economic priorities after the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, announced a new inflation target of 3%.
We are forgetting that we are a developmental state. We are a country that needs to develop, and a lot of inflation targeting is a good regime, but a lot of challenges exist in that there is so much that we import into the country, among the crude oil for refining and making the fuels that drive the economy. I think that having a 3% inflation target in a country like ours is going to be very restrictive.
Meanwhile, currency strategist at Treasury One, Andre Celia, noted this move was positive in the long term.
Only for the consumer, because that could spell, if we reach those targets and we remain at those, it could spell lower interest rates, more money into the pocket of a consumer. But it also simply means that the wage demands, if we anchor inflation at 3% and reaching it, will be less.
Celia also welcomed the launch of the procurement payments dashboard, marking a major step toward greater transparency and anti-corruption in public spending. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Meanwhile, the Finance Minister further announced a ramp-up in effort to root out thousands of so-called ghost workers from the state payroll. The Minister announced that the National Treasury is working closely with the Department of Public Service Administration and Home Affairs on a data-driven approach that integrates systems across government. The system has so far uncovered close to 9,000 high-risk cases.
We are also waging war on ghost workers in public service. We have heard calls from political parties and civil society. National Treasury is working closely with the Department of Public Service and Administration and Home Affairs on data-driven approach that integrates systems across the government. We are beginning to see the result of this collaboration.
And the fact that you could find in one provincial department of education, R1 billion is estimated as being lost to ghost posts. That for us is quite significant. The 9,000 possible ghost employees, they must still be fully verified. That could be significant savings. But more critically, we think is not just to save that money, but actually to go and hire the people who it was intended to hire in the first place. We have unemployed doctors, we have unemployed nurses, we have a rising teacher to learner ratio, we have a rising police to society ratio. And we need to be filling these positions because it can't provide public services without warm bodies.
In addition, opposition parties say the speech was silent on poverty and unemployment, accusing it of recycling old rhetoric that fails to address the basic challenges faced by ordinary South Africans.
Reject this new inflation targeting because we think that it's going to increase the cost of borrowing. And we know at the center of borrowing is the masses of our people. There's a repetition of what he said at the beginning of the year. There's no clear plan on how we're going to deal with unemployment, how are we going to deal with policing in South Africa, because we've got a serious problem of resources in the police, and how are we going to deal with issues of defense itself.
There was not a single mention of poverty. There was not a single mention of inequality. There was not a single mention of the National Development Plan, whose targets are out of kilter and are not going to be met by 2030. There was not even a mention of the medium-term budget, medium-term planning framework.
We are seeing a consolidation of our debt, and we should be able to maintain it for the first time basically in 15 years below 78%, meaning it won't keep rising. That's important to South Africans because as we spend more on servicing our debt, we're less able to spend on things we need, such as hospitals, schools and police officers.
The cost of living, every single person you speak to talks about the rapid rise of prices. If you buy bread around the same time last year, you come back now, it has gone up much higher. So when you talk about containing inflation, it is essentially about maintaining a lower cost of living, which then helps with the poor to deal with those.
Still in your financial news, let's now look at your latest market update as at 7:30 this evening. Coming up after the break, Madlanga Commission hears concerns about the deal EMPD's Mkhwanazi struck with Matlala's companies, and the leader of the Africa Maibuye calls for the establishment of a commission of inquiry to look at addressing the black poverty question.
Host broadcaster of the G20 South Africa 2025.
Welcome back. Let's continue with this. The Madlanga Commission has heard of the insidious lengths suspended EMPD police chief Julius Mkhwanazi allegedly went to in a bid to legitimize Vusimuzi Cat Matlala's company, Cat VIP Protection Services called agreement with the city of Ekurhuleni in what has been described as a cover-up. This time from the vantage point of the city's former head of employee relations, Xolani Ngiza, who listed the red flags in Mkhwanazi's alleged conduct that informed the decision to institute and extend a suspension against Mkhwanazi, which raised ire of former city manager Dr. Imogen Mshazi.
Suspended acting EMPD chief Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi's steps to allegedly cover his tracks ended up revealing more flaws in his attempt to formalize the endless working relationship Mkhwanazi had with Cat VIP Protection Services. This as the Commission heard that Mkhwanazi allegedly misrepresented his personal endless working relationship with Cat Security as one with the EMPD and conflated his role as Deputy Chief as well as his acting Chief of Police stint to do so.
What became clear in terms of the investigation is that indeed there was some working relationship, but it's not a working relationship of the municipality with Cat VIP. It is not the working relationship of EMPD with Cat VIP. It is a working relationship that he has constructed, outside of regulatory framework, outside of the policies of the municipality, outside of legislation. He constructed that relationship.
The Commission heard that the MOU between the EMPD and Matlala's security company did not follow due process, and that the city effectively had vehicles registered in its name, but they were used by Matlala's company, seemingly suggesting that the underlying purpose could have been geared towards alleged criminality.
You can't willy-nilly have such documents. You simply can't. Before you get to the point of generating a document of this nature, there should be a report that speaks to the need that has been identified. Before you even get to the point of crafting a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding.
Ngiza further testified that when Mkhwanazi's suspension was extended, it attracted a hostile personal call from the former city manager, Dr. Imogen Mshazi, who allegedly lambasted him and demanded Mkhwanazi's return to work. The hearings continue. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Pretoria.
Meanwhile, the executive mayor of the city of Ekurhuleni, Dr. Nkosindipinde Qakaza, says those found to have acted wrongfully within the structures of the Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Police Department will face the full might of the law.
Of the EMPD boss has raised eyebrows among many, including council members of Ekurhuleni. Opposition parties within the council have welcomed the suspension, saying further steps should be taken, with some even suggesting a commission of inquiry into the Metro's police department.
The Commission of Inquiry has now laid bare what Action SA has been warning about for years. The testimony of suspended EMPD Chief Mapiyaya and the former Deputy Chief Revo Spies has exposed a deeply compromised police department, riddled with corruption, fear and political interference.
We need to have an inquiry, Commission of Inquiry in the Metro, a subcommittee looking at all these allegations and make recommendations to the Council of Ekurhuleni, and steps need to be taken against it.
The executive mayor says an internal forensic report has been commissioned and will be implemented fully without fear or favor.
The internal forensic report that we had commissioned is actually pronounced clearly. That is why now there's a suspension of the former, the suspended acting chief and all other related officials who would have connived deliberately or either by omission and all that. The report is there, and the report is being processed as we speak.
It is unclear at this stage when the commissioned forensic final report will be tabled before council. Calvin Tlutla, SABC News, Ekurhuleni.
To this now, the leader of the Africa Maibuye movement, Floyd Shivambu, has called for the establishment of a commission of inquiry to look at addressing the black poverty question. Shivambu was addressing party members in Midrand in the north of Johannesburg at a public engagement to give a progress report on the fledgling party's progress to establish itself.
There has to be a commission to look into the black poverty question, because the 31 years of the so-called democracy have demonstrated that the black poverty question has not been dealt with. Parliament and government must put in place a commission of inquiry and ad hoc committees to investigate the systematic and systemic exclusion and marginalization of women in mainstream economic participation in South Africa. There has to be dedicated focus on the causes of gender-based violence.
The reopened inquest into the death of Steve Biko has been postponed and
host broadcaster of the G20 South Africa 2025.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's shift our focus to this now. The reopened inquest into the death of anti-apartheid activist and Black Consciousness Movement founder Stephen Bantu Biko has been postponed to the 30th of January 2026 for a virtual case management. According to the National Prosecuting Authority, the persons of interest in the case are in the process of securing state-funded legal representation, with funding now in its final stages of approval.
Now, this process have taken so long. This one is 48 years. The Lutuli one that was heard recently as long, and we hope that when we come back in January, we will then have a firmed up date for this matter to sit and to be heard once and for all. And so we will continue to push for that to happen.
The matter has now been postponed again to the 30th of January for the further case management that is necessitated by the funding that has not been confirmed for the two persons of interest who were former police officers. They have applied for the state to fund their legal representation, and that has to be confirmed before we can go ahead.
We now hand over the reins to the weather desk for the latest in temperature changes. Do stay tuned.
Good evening and welcome. Let's take a look at tonight's weather conditions as well as tomorrow. Clear skies over the western as well as the southwestern parts of the country this evening. Otherwise, partly cloudy through the central, northeastern as well as the eastern parts of the country. There is a band of isolated showers and thunder showers in places over Limpopo, reaching the central regions of Mpumalanga. Tomorrow, starting off with early morning fog patches over the western parts of the Northern Cape, in places over KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Free State and the southern parts of Mpumalanga. Those fog patches expected to reduce visibility to less than a kilometer in places, so please do take caution if you are driving early tomorrow morning, and do keep a safe following distance. Otherwise, it will be fine over the southern interior, partly cloudy conditions over the northern, northeastern as well as the eastern parts of the country, with isolated showers and thunder showers in places over the northeastern and eastern parts. Showers and rain along the coastal regions of the Eastern Cape. It will be scattered in places over Mpumalanga. South African Weather Service warning of high fire danger conditions in places over the Northern Cape and the western parts of the Western Cape, where runaway veld fires are possible for tomorrow. Now, overnight temperatures in Bloemfontein down to 16, Cape Town and Beaufort West dropping down to 17. 22 is your overnight low in Upington. Tomorrow, very hot conditions with a maximum of 38, 32 in Johannesburg and Pretoria, scorching in Musina with a maximum of 39. However, still a cool day expected along the southern coastline, George, Gqeberha and East London peaking at 22. And then on Friday, warm to hot conditions with isolated showers and thunder showers in places scattered over Gauteng and the eastern parts of the northwest. That's your weather. To stay tuned.